McKinsey just came out with the idea of CEO as like chief storyteller, and like what that means for, companies going forward when they're, trying to like hire a CEO, and like what it means for the CEO, like now having to own, like the image of the company, right? Like their words and actions, like it's not just PR. Now you're kind of like the face of the brand, And we've kind of had that, right? Where like there's been, CEOs that have kind of, gone beyond like the brand, Steve Jobs and Apple, Elon Musk and, Tesla, SpaceX and all that. But now the difference is that starting to be expected more and more. One recent example that I've been seeing all over my timeline is the Open Door CEO who like a group of board members and like activists, on Twitter essentially got her fired because they didn't like how she was responding to their earnings call that just came out. One of the main things that they were mentioning was just like that she's not talking about the company or like the vision in a way that inspires confidence or that belief in her ability to lead the company. So that's going to be a thing I think going forward a lot, where the expectations are just like really high for people to be good at like the forward facing aspect of their job, to be transparent, consistent, and jump on big moments fast. We've also seen that like a lot more is expected of them in terms of like jumping on like cultural moments. We've seen that like a lot of companies were jumping in on like the whole like woke thing. We're starting to question of like where are those decisions being made, right? So a couple stats that were interesting from the McKinsey article is that 6 in 10 people say that the CEO's actions shape their view of a company. That CEO LinkedIn engagement has grown 20%, and their follower growth has gone up 40%. McKinsey says that the world's top CEOs spend 30% of their time on stakeholder engagement. And they called out a few CEOs that they think are doing it right. Satya Nadella of Microsoft made culture his number one job. He even created a culture cabinet to help him, create this. And then the CEO of Delta has started using earnings calls to reinforce the company's stance on voting rights. What does this mean, right, for companies going forward? I think it's not just big companies that have to face up to this. It's a lot of smaller companies as well, where it's like you as like the face of the brand need to like come up with the strategy for how you're going to respond to things as they occur. Are there moments that you can jump on, like as you as a human being, not as like the company like PR, right? So Jamie Dimon has his like annual letters for JP Morgan. Like I mentioned, Nadella has his cultural overhaul at like Microsoft, and you see him coming out a lot more whenever there's stuff happening about OpenAI. He's like, responding to like journalists, and he's gone on like a speaking tour to like talk about the involvement of Microsoft. We're seeing a lot more CEOs taking stands on hot button issues. So Patagonia, the CEO is like well known for, going out there and talking about sustainability and like climate change, and how he's creating a company that wants to value the employees. It's a great way that companies can like look to how they're recruiting for like top employees, right? By the CEO kind of like putting out his persona as like being open and transparent and like talking about the company and like being able to sell the mission and the vision of the company. That's a great way for people to feel like, hey, I want to work for that company. And like we've seen that with Sam Altman right now with like OpenAI, Elon Musk for Tesla and SpaceX, Twitter. Even like when he first took over, there were like people volunteering to go like work there purely because he was being like brought on. So that's like something that I tell my clients as well, that like you putting yourself out there is also one of the best ways for you to bring in the type of people that you want to bring into your company to like fit the culture based on how you're talking about the company and promoting what you're building and how you're building it, and creating that like shared culture for the company.
Yeah, I suspect that as we've become more divisive among politics and everything, there's also this need that people have now to support the brands that they feel most aligned with.
Hmm.
And I think it makes sense in a world where there are so many brands,
Hmm.
right? Like if you don't agree with Or look, yeah, if you don't like Elon Musk, you don't have to be on Twitter. There are other social networks you can use. Now, that being said, I know that that's not the only reason one would choose to be or not to be on Twitter, but just an example of something. Like, now that there are just more things than ever before, people can kind of choose which brands they want to be associated with. They
Mhm.
like when Lululemon years ago had
Yeah.
that whole snafu with like the CEO saying,
Oh,
"My
yeah.
clothes are for skinny people," or
Yeah.
like, you know,
Maybe
like
some people shouldn't be wearing Lululemon, I think is what he
right, and
said.
so but that's a very clear to me, that's
Yeah.
very clear, like, "Oh, I'm never shopping here again." But for me, that was a reason to be like, "Great, I'll
Mhm.
take my money elsewhere. I
Mhm.
don't need to support this company." Right, and I'm just saying overall, like, so many choices. Consumers can vote with their dollars, right? It makes
Mhm.
sense that they would want to hear from a CEO that they like.
There's so much more pressure now. Like the CEO has to be like out there putting his face out there and talking about, stuff. I just think it's like adding another layer of like work that they have to do. So I've talked to like a few potential clients that are just like, I just don't have time to also do this while I'm like raising money and like building the company. And like this is where hiring somebody to help you do that can be beneficial. All these CEOs, I mean, if you think about it, they have to have PR people that are, also there for the company, but then help them learn what to say to the media, like learn what topics they should like jump on top of, like what they should be saying, right? Like a go direct model of like CEOs having to talk to the media and like kind of creating like the brand narrative that they want that will be beneficial to them, or going to like the media that's like friendlier to them. Now that this is happening, it's just going to become a little bit more standard for CEOs to have to be able to do this a little bit more. So if that's the thing that you want to do is like be a CEO and like run a company, then it's like learning how to speak in public, learning how to like communicate in a way that people understand what your mission and vision are, is going to be like the way that you're going to have to go, just so that you can bring more people on board to like what you're doing. And we've kind of seen this, right? Like within social media and like the way that people interact a little bit more is like with videos and like photos and stuff. Like people just want to see that like a human is there and it's not just, a faceless like corporation that's trying to sell you stuff. So it makes sense that we're kind of headed in that direction.